All right, we are so excited today to have a super special guest on our show. As I learned so much more about you just in talking with you and then exploring your website, which for all of you listening, we'll put all of Nick's links in the show notes. But I was just amazed at all of your experiences and what you are doing as a coach and as an athlete. And then because you are our first guest to talk specifically on adventure racing, we have some extra excitement here behind the scenes going on. So Nick, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to hop in and just kind of get talking about everything with nutrition and sports. And let's go.
Awesome. Well, when we use the phrase like adventure racing, what is this for those who are new or have concepts in their mind, but they're not quite sure? Could you give us maybe a higher level of what exactly is adventure racing and maybe the things that bring people into this sport?
Yeah, so adventure racing is a multi-sport that involves navigating by map and compass. And so you use multiple modalities. The three main disciplines involve navigating by mountain bike, trekking on foot, and paddling. Occasionally you'll have ropes or canyoneering or other unique disciplines involved. And the idea is that there's a set time that you have to be back at the finish line, and you try to navigate to as many hidden checkpoints that are on your map in the given time. So the team with the most points at the end wins, regardless of when they finish, as long as they meet the cutoff. And so it's kind of a neat sport that way. And anything from family-friendly beginner races will be about 6 hours. So imagine you spend about 2 hours with your kids biking around a state park and paddling around and then on foot hiking around. Those are really good. We'll call them sprint. So you might have elite racers flying fast and redlining the entire 6 hours. And you also have right next to them families having fun, all the way through multi-day expedition races that'll be 7-10 days long. And those involve traversing vast landscapes around the world, often in mountainous environments, high consequential environments, a lot bigger route decisions, choices, and just a whole different dynamic. And then additionally, it's a 1 to 4 person team sport. So in a race, you'll have anywhere from 1 to 4 people. And at the expedition length, where things are much more consequential, they're 4-person co-ed teams at the most elite levels is what those are. And the entire team travels together on the entire course. So there's a whole team dynamic aspect of teamwork and working together in high stressful environments that comes together.
Holy cow. Nick, we might have questions that are very newbie because I don't think Bob and I haven't done anything close to this. So our apologies in advance for maybe some silly questions here.
No, I love it.
How did you get into this sport? What's your background in athletics?
So background-wise, I played college soccer, and then I went into the Army. I did the whole airborne ranger kind of thing out of ROTC. I was an officer for a while, deployed, did some special operations stuff and things along those lines. And when I was getting out of the military, 2 buddies on Facebook posted that they did some adventure race thing, and they got super lost, and they had a big one coming up. And I just shot them a message and was like, hey, I'll be back in the area. Let's grab a coffee, and I'll teach you how to do map and compass work. They invited me along, and I hopped in on a 24-hour race and had no idea what adventure racing was, just did the thing and had a blast, and then got hooked and started racing more and more. So
that's amazing. Well, first, thank you for your service to our country. We definitely appreciate that. I kind of feel like you had like those skills that you developed while in the service probably really helps with adventure racing. I mean, I heard you say some of them, but would you confer with that?
Very much so. Working in small units and just stressful environments and the teamwork dynamic. And then also just handling stress is important, right? So the more you're good at that, you're able to make smart and logical decisions when emotions are high. And so that's kind of probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. Can we talk about that stress? Because I feel like a lot of our listeners are like, okay, adventure racing. It's funny that you associated a 6-hour race with the term sprint which I'm sure a lot of our listeners are like, what? So, but we appreciate that. I mean, we're all triathletes too, so we get it. But when we talk about stress, there is that physical stress, right? The mountain biking, the paddling, the trekking, but there is that mental stress. So can you kind of get into that, the differences that you've seen, physiological stress versus mental stress? And maybe does one sometimes overpower the other? Are they fairly even? Does it depend on the terrain? Like I know you just mentioned before we came on, you just came back from a 7-day adventure race in New Zealand. Does it depend on the country you're in? Like talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So I guess what we can do is kind of break it into we'll talk mostly about the expedition big stuff.
Okay.
So when you look at the shorter races, that's going to be very similar physiologically to triathlon and a lot of those other multi-sports where the duration's similar. The one difference is you go a little slower, slightly slower, because you need to cognitively think through the maps and where you're navigating. So if you're super fast but you're going the wrong way, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
So just think of like I'm pushing as hard as I can and tone it back slightly to be smart and efficient. For the large expedition races, the biggest thing is you're doing multi-day races, you sleep on the clock. And so sleep strategy is very important. You'll average maybe 2 hours a night across the race. And then you're also layering in, you're trying to avoid being in a caloric deficit over days. And so that's kind of where the nutrition strategy comes in. Palate fatigue is huge. So if you try to do goos for 4 or 5, 6 days straight, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And then when you're sleeping, you want to think also about protein intake and other aspects for maximizing recovery there. Eating big meals just because your body's going to burn through it while you sleep, try to recharge. So there's a bit of a difference, nuance there. But if you think also heat, cold, temperature exposure, you're at 2 a.m. in the Alpine and it's 30 something degrees, windy and raining, and you're on day 2 and it's sleep deprived, you are in a very stressful environment that you need to navigate together as a team. And then layer in maybe you're lost because it's white out, like, okay, we're going to bed down and find shelter and figure it out. And so there's just a different level. Think of it as like you're on a huge expedition and you're racing. And so you often need to make smart decisions, just like you're in a mountaineering environment. So it kind of layers in just a variety of those. And so, when you layer in sleep deprivation, caloric deficits that can arise just from how many hours you're racing, the lack of sleep and sleep strategy, plus navigating under those circumstances, it ends up being just unique, very unique physiologically. But I would say mentally is more important than physiologically when it comes to it.
So do you have to vet your team members? Like, are you like, oh, hey,
oh my gosh,
just so we are all on the same page, like this is what's happening out there. And like, I could just see like someone like, oh no, I definitely need like 5 hours of sleep every night. You're like, oh no, you're not going to be a great team member. Like, do you have to go through that process when you're trying to come together as a team?
You do. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways to have the conversations. And so one thing that we see is people have the wave top conversations, but they don't look at the details. So an example is everybody's going to have highs and lows through the race. And so the team moves together at the slowest pace, right? As fast as you can go. So often it's going to be where you're cross-loading weight off somebody and even towing them. So you might put a bungee cable from one person to another so you can drag them along faster and you take weight off them, and now the whole team moves faster.
Interesting.
Or if you're up high in elevation, there are times where one of my good buddies, Kevin, extremely strong on the bike. I mean, wildly strong. He was towing me on bike in a race in the same day that in the Alpine on foot, I was picking his weight and going because he just wasn't handling the elevation well at that point and was really just not feeling good. So we cross-loaded weight and we can move faster. And then later in the race, he's towing me on bike like it was the next day or something like that.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of ebb and flow. And a big piece is how do you accept help and how do you communicate that is a big detail you need to do, because for some people, they want to be encouraged. Others want to be just left alone when they're in the pain cave. And so how do you, when you're in the pain cave in a team environment, how do you handle that? And then psychologically, okay, I'm the slow one on the team or the weak link right now. Like I'm hurting. How do you psychologically handle that, right? And so experienced racers can, one, try to avoid that a lot by knowing how to dial in everything from caffeine intake to their food intake, hydration, all those things. They dial it in, they get more used to the multi-day stuff. But even then, if something happens and they're hurting, psychologically, how do they handle that and bounce back? And then if I need help from people, or how do I react when people communicate to me, is a big piece that you need to work through. But yeah, a lot of times there's a lot of word of mouth of people racing with each other to try to feel that out. You'll often in races run across other teams from time to time. So you see teams when they're beat up like you are, and you can kind of get a vibe for how they are. And you sit there and have just detailed conversations on what that looks like, and then try to start on a shorter race with somebody to feel them out before hopping into a big one.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, or you set expectations. So it's, hey, yeah, we're going to go do this big race, but first time we're racing together, we're going to tone it back. We're not going to push to podium or be super competitive. We're going to go more for the experience and work together. We're going to try to race smart, and it alleviates the pressure of the competition aspect. And so that's often a really good way when onboarding new members to go do that, because it takes away that pressure. And a huge part of what we do is the experience. So, I mean, I just came back from that 7-day in New Zealand. We were mid-pack. New Zealanders are amazingly fast in the sport. It's a high school sport there, a college sport
No
there.
kidding? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's one of the gentlemen who retired recently. He was a 7-time world champion, and just it's a different sport in New Zealand. And going out there, we were mid-pack. We did well. But at the end of the day, it's the experience that's huge. You know, you spend that much time in the mountains, on the coast, all around. We saw wild penguins at one point. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a big experience factor to it. You get to travel the world and just see vast landscapes in ways you never would see in very remote places.
Nick, like for that race you just did, 7-day, and with the checkpoints, are you doing each sport in sequence, or does it kind of rotate based on terrain and duration or distance? Like we're on bike, then we paddle, then we're back to bike, then we're hiking, or is that just unique to each race format?
The latter of what you said, yeah, it's very unique.
Okay.
So the course design can really be varied based on the availability, logistics, the terrain. So yeah, you can go trek bike, paddle, any kind of combination. The paddling in multi-day is often pack rafts, which are inflatable, essentially canoes, kayaks, inflatable, but very lightweight. So you can roll them up and pack them. So you may even have things where we can take the river, we can hike over the mountain kind of stuff. Or you may have to, there have been times, the World Championship in Canada last year, we biked with our pack rafts on our backs to then get to a river to break down our bikes, paddle, mount them on, break them apart, put them on the pack raft, and then raft down, some whitewater stuff.
Oh
and
my
so,
gosh.
Holy
it's
moly.
very, very big, burly adventures.
Yeah. My question too is like training wise. So obviously you have those 3 dominant sports, but you also have to be proficient in building a bike, breaking down a bike, paddle, all that stuff. What is if you can give us like a snapshot, what does your training look like for these things?
Yeah, so my training is a lot of running and a lot of cross training are the big ones. And then I'll lift weights a little bit, nothing crazy, but, mix of body weight and some actual get under barbell a little bit.
Yeah.
And paddle training when the weather's good. And so the paddle training is really just honing in the technique. So for paddling, just because you put more energy into it, it's like swimming, right? You can really stroke hard, but if the technique's off, it doesn't matter. So you can really go faster with good technique. So that's kind of the paddling is more the technique aspect. And then it's mostly running, like ultra kind of style running. So I'll hop in different ultras as like training stuff from time to time, like a 50K or 70K in between big races. And then the biking is just, time on bike. And so the biking can be fun. So I'll do anything from road, gravel, trainers to mountain biking. Mountain biking's kind of the preferred.
Right.
But, biking's biking essentially. You're putting wattage into the cranks, and so you can change it up and have fun. And then another aspect's orienteering. So orienteering are like shorter races, usually 3 hours or less, and you're map and compass. And so that's just good to get the navigation practice in. And then the rope stuff. I used to be, big into climbing. I did some big wall stuff. So the rope systems in these races, you don't need a ton of background in any of that. They're going to have guides, and they're going to have things generally handled safety-wise, and they'll check you before the race starts and teach you what you need to know. However, having that experience is good. So there have been races where you'll be on glaciers or something, and you might need to, before the race, I was teaching at Expedition Alaska for everybody. I was helping with the safety crew stuff. We were just teaching basic, self-arrest and 3-to-1 stuff, and we had safety crews that were going to be pre-placed. However, basic stuff where you can come in and we'll make sure that you're safe and prepared.
I am fascinated, and I'm thinking of your comment, if we kind of segue a little bit to fueling the adventure races, especially these longer efforts. And like you mentioned, if we're in maybe higher elevations or the environmental challenges, let alone like trying to figure out when's the group going to sleep, how do you start thinking about the fueling aspect in hydration? And are you fully self-supported for that duration, or are there some supplies like water and stuff at the checkpoints? And maybe this is per race that some of this changes, but I wonder if you could start diving into that piece.
Yeah, of course. So for the big races, you're typically going to refill water your own on the course. So you're going to filter bottles or some kind of purification. And if you hit stores or gas stations, anything, like you can stop and fill water or go buy a sandwich, whatever you need. Those are all allowed. Typically what you have are, before the race, you'll be given a schematic. So you won't know where you're going. The maps won't be revealed. However, you'll know time estimates or distance, duration, those kind of aspects, elevation gain for the different segments and the order they are. And there'll be a logistics chart. So you might have 27-gallon totes. So let's say you have an A tote, a B tote, your paddle bag, and maybe your bike boxes that you'll pack your bikes into. They'll put a weight limit on each one for the team. And then from there, you can then pack as many supplies as you want. And you'll know at what leg ends you get those. And so, the time estimates are estimates. And some races, they give very little detail. So we did one where we thought pretty much everybody estimated a 20 to 25 hour leg. And it wound up being like a 30 to 40 hour leg. And so at that point, pretty much everybody's out of food.
Yeah.
And it was just bushwhacking. I mean, 1K an hour movement pace in thick bushwhack. So it's like very different. But yeah, that occasionally happens. Typically you have pretty good stuff dialed in. And so you're looking at how many calories do I need to get through the leg, and knowing that's also weight that you're carrying along the way.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of balancing all of that. And then looking at temperature, palate fatigue. So I would say one of the number one things is palate fatigue in such a long race. And so you want to get good food in you, food that you can carry, and food that you can eat when you don't want to eat. And so it's a mix of real food, real meals, a mix of, liquid nutrition, and then even just like candy or, cheeses, whatever is going to feel good on day 3 when you're hungry. I even do McDonald's cheeseburgers, I'll throw those in bins, and then when you get there, I'll down one because it's, I don't eat those in real life, but there it's like I can down it and it tastes amazing, and then I do that in a dehydrated meal, and all of a sudden I'm up a bunch of calories before I go to bed. And so
Nick, this is interesting. Can you? I don't want you to share anything you don't want to your competitors. So please respect this question and your answer. But can you take us through like this race in New Zealand? Like, what nutrition did you start with? Can you take us through that? Like, what was in your pack? Just so our listeners are like, wow, right?
Yeah, completely. And there's no secrets early on on the stuff. So there's a small company, Ben Racing owns it, but called 4 Hour Fuel, and that's kind of big in the sport. And so it's just dehydrated kind of mangoes or dehydrated other stuff, some pea protein and things, mixes into water. It's like a shake, right?
Okay.
And so it's very easy in a bottle to have like about 800 calories. And so that's something that's easy. When you're looking at your nutrition,
is that all carbohydrates mostly? I mean, you mentioned the pea protein.
Mostly a little bit of protein, but pretty much carbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost entirely carbs, and then a little bit of pea protein, and I think they put in some type of sucralose or sugary stuff in there too. But it just tastes good. But when you're looking at the modalities, on bike, liquid's going to be really nice to have because you're biking. And then you also have to have real food in there when you're doing I don't know if you're doing a 30-hour bike leg, for example. And then on paddle, the nutrition's hard because you want to keep paddling. So if you stop paddling to grab stuff, so often liquid nutrition's good on the paddle as well. If you're on a flowing river, you can have some stuff because you can stop for a second and eat, or you just hit a whitewater section. Now someone else is coming through, so you're going to wait a second for them. So there's just some factors there. But for me, I would say I think I started with, it was a short leg, and then we hopped on paddle. So we did a bike into a trek in a big park, just up some small mountains and back down, and then biked again it was like an hour bike back, and then we hopped on the river. So in total, 5-6 hours before we hopped on the river for, I think the river was like another like maybe 6 hours of paddling. So the first 12 hours, it was just kind of like shorter legs. And so we had bike nutrition, and then we had our foot nutrition packed in our packs already. So we could go there, drop the bike, head on foot, and then you hop back on the bike and go. And so you only really needed about 2 hours of bike nutrition. So I just did liquid nutrition for the bike. And then on foot, I had a little bit of like real food kind of stuff on me. So I had some, I think I had a goo or two because it was early in the race. And then I had a little bit of like dried mangoes, stuff like that, just because when you're moving through steep terrain and different stuff, we're not really sprinting or running super fast. So we're not redlining. So you can eat foods that you typically wouldn't eat in more of like a ultra or a marathon or any of those, because you're going. And so for there, trying to get real food in where you're going to get more micronutrients, and also you're not worried as much about the fiber intake. And then in that scenario, getting a lot of antioxidants in you, I think just helps over the course of the race as well. So that's kind of what I started with. And then in my paddle bag, I had a burger. I could just down a burger before hitting the paddle. Your heart rate's lower on the paddle, so you're not really worried too much. You can really stack calories on the paddle compared to other modalities, just the way that your body's sitting and the venous return is lower, so or less resistance, so you're able to keep your heart rate lower. And so I find that a good time to really like eat bigger meals is on the paddle leg if you can before getting on, and then having a bunch of liquid nutrition on there with a kind of like a camelback type thing. You can just string it on, or you have it on you, and then you can just keep sipping so you can keep paddling and pushing through.
Interesting that you mentioned fiber, because I was actually going to ask you that. Have you ever run into issues with like too much fiber in any races? Okay. Yeah.
No, we're like if you poop, it's a good thing, because like, it's like there's times where you might go 2 days without because you're just really in a caloric deficit, and you're really fighting that, because you're moving you're moving, we'll say like 22 hours a day of movement. And so it's just for days on end, and you'll really won't sleep the first 40 hours you don't sleep. And so the second night of a race is most often when you sleep, and you try to push as long as you can. So if you can push to 3 a.m. without going off the rails of getting lost or just people, too sleep deprived, then you can time it to where you can generally wake up around sunrise or right before. And so the circadian rhythm kicks over. So you get the sleep drive knocked out, the circadian rhythm kicks in with the sunlight, and all of a sudden you're just like extra fresh and flying the next day. And then you generally try to push to the 3 a.m. mark using caffeine and other stuff strategically to get through there before sleeping. And then with the strategy, there's times where you'll deviate based on the course. So maybe there's a dark zone, so they're going to shut down a part of the race at night because it's very dangerous, right? Maybe that's a alpine rope section or alpine section. Maybe it's a whitewater river section that at night's too much, class 3 plus, something like that. And so for there, you might need to deviate. Or in this last race, we were going into a very difficult trek section. It was called the bush out there, but it was just very thick bushwhacking, 1K an hour for 30K or whatever. And so it's like a long thing, and you're doing that at night. The navigation becomes very difficult and strenuous. And so it's like, okay, we're about to start this. We could start this at 6 p.m. or we could sleep 3 hours, and we'll start it at night, but we're going to be reset and smarter cognitively. And so you can watch GPS tracks of teams, and you'll see some teams push, and then all of a sudden they burn 2 hours at a checkpoint because they're in the wrong spot, but they're just so sleep deprived they're not noticing. And so sometimes you can gain efficiencies by sleeping strategically at points before pushing.
Wow, there's so much strategy. And it sounds like from the fueling and hydration piece, like the palate fatigue is definitely something that the longer the race or the more difficult, trying to keep tabs on that or prevent as much of that as possible. And like you were saying, with the kind of bigger meals before sleep is important. Are there other mistakes you've learned along the way, or maybe some of your athletes, like, oh, we thought this or that, or like even some of the unknowns, like it took a lot longer than we thought, we ran out of fuel? That's not a mistake per se, but because I imagine you have to be so conscientious of weight that you're carrying and that that aspect. Are there other things, Nick, as far as like, oh, this is something I had to learn along the way a little bit better, and maybe that relates to caffeine or some of those other strategies based on that kind of race.
Yeah, I think a couple things, I guess. One is that when you're working as the team and you have different, no matter what team you have and how well they train together, you're going to have stronger athletes and weaker athletes, right? And so when you're moving together, you need to keep an eye on who's above threshold and below threshold and try to stay below, LT2, right? And so you'll get somebody that is pushing harder than the others, and ideally you need to cross-load weight and move together as one. But when you factor in the nutrition of, okay, maybe they're self-conscious and they're trying to push to keep up, but now they're burning their carbohydrate stores unsustainably, right? And then layer in maybe it's hot, and now all of a sudden they're not eating as much, and it's just a bad recipe, right? And so that's a situation that commonly happens in a lot of teams, and something that the more experienced you are on the top racers, they understand what that is. They communicate it prior. If they've been racing for a while, they may just proactively put somebody on toe, cross-load weight, and they can communicate, hey, we need to step it down a notch, right? Because we dropped 3K an hour on the road of speed, but now that person's moving sustainably, right? And so they're eating more, and all of a sudden now the team moves faster for the next 8 hours, right? And so I would say that's one piece when we look at integrating the team moving together for an endurance sport with the nutrition is that aspect and the personalities. And so that's kind of a big lesson I think a lot of teams learn is there.
Nick, what's a fun question? What's the biggest nutrition mistake you made probably early in your adventure racing career?
Oh, great question. I had a bunch of dark chocolate covered almonds that I was eating on one leg.
Yeah.
And that with some other things, I was just eating a bunch of acidic stuff, and my stomach turned, and that was bad. And so,
God.
yeah, that wasn't good. And then there was one time where I put half of like a Chipotle style burrito in a bag, and then I went to eat it like 20 hours later, and it was not good. And so I spit it out, but like a bunch of my calories, and it was like, oh, that was not, hindsight was like, that was not smart. Yeah.
I was actually wondering about that because you mentioned like the cheeseburger. I'm like, well, what about like food safety and stuff, right? I mean, to your point, things go bad, right?
Yeah, and surprisingly, McDonald's cheeseburgers, those preservatives, I mean, they're amazing. So it's like the
I don't know if
opposite
that's
of
surprising or not, but
I know we won't ask why.
It's like the opposite of what, as a registered dietitian, you preach.
Totally.
And it's a very unique nuance, but it lasts.
Oh my gosh. That speaks volumes, listeners. You can definitely tell where we're going with that comment. But what about calories? Like, Nick, have you calculated like how many calories your body needs? Like how have you approached how many calories you need versus like the expenditure side of it, or has it just been kind of a moving target for you?
I feel it's more of how many calories can I consume before I have issues and try to maximize it.
Okay.
And so a big thing is, the more you train eating and the better you get endurance wise, the more you can eat and the better you can eat.
Yeah.
So when you're planning it out, I'll generally plan between 200 to 250 calories an hour.
Okay.
Over the races. You're moving at a lower heart rate than you would for other events, so you're burning, higher percentage of fat.
Yep.
And that's something sustainably. And then when you get to transitions in other areas, you can then eat a larger meal, kind of caloric type thing. Or if you're going to bed down, is really the time to do it. If it's a fast transition, you need to be careful because if you eat too much at once and then you hop on and you push, it's not going to work. So you need to be very strategic, but think of like sustainably carrying the weight and what you can eat and moving with that and maximizing what you can eat where you're not going to end up with a ton of extra food. And then other things are, you can throw an extra dehydrated meal that weighs almost nothing in your pack. And now if you end up where, hey, that's an extra 1,000 calories, right?
Right.
So you have an extra 1,000 calories and you run into a situation where, hey, this leg's going to take us an extra 5-6 hours. You can then just pour some water in there and let it soak for a couple hours. And now you know that you're going to be okay.
You got it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Have you run into any foods or ingredients or anything that are kind of like your secrets? Like I need to have, like, this is my game changer food or product or anything like you always have with you no matter what?
Double stuffed Oreos are amazing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
like day 3 with palate fatigue, I can just smash those while I'm going, and I just have a bottle of water. So like hit a creek and I can just slam those down with some stuff, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden a couple hours of slamming Oreos, and it's just like a palate fatigue game changer for me. And it's very individual, but
Yeah.
that's the big thing. And then salt intake. So because you're not redlining as much, you sometimes don't think about the salt intake as much, or multiple days in, you're sleep deprived, you're not thinking of it as much. Whereas when you're really pushing and sweating a lot more, you are. And so having some, like 750 milligram like salt things that are very lightweight, you have a couple in you, and if you notice your normal electrolytes are off, you start to get the swelling a little bit, like in your fingers and different things. That's a pretty obvious sign. And then often racers will just take a lot of salt, and 30 minutes, 60 minutes later, that goes away. And so that's kind of one aspect as well that's common, is just balancing all those things and problem solving proactively. And then when you notice something's off, you try to adjust it quickly.
Right.
Same thing like caffeine intake. You want to be proactive on the caffeine side, and then the half-life, and you want to kind of balance that timing with sleep, so you can kind of hopefully be on the backside of the half-life going into your sleep. At the same time, though, it's 3 a.m. and at midnight, if you're going off the rails, you need to take some, and your body will still sleep, but it's kind of trying to balance all that out. And then another piece that a lot of people are experimenting with now is just creatine for reducing cognitive decline and sleep deprivation. So there have been several studies on it, and they usually use 20 grams in a single dose, which can sometimes be a lot for your stomach. So looking at more microdosing, 5-10 grams a couple times as opposed to 20 grams at once, and seeing how that does. And so far we feel like we're seeing effects, and if it's placebo, we'll take it, but it seems to be working a bit with some of the microdosing of that.
That's so good to hear. I was curious about the supplements beyond caffeine. I was thinking of creatine and exogenous ketones, or if there were any other supplements that you would take for cognition and focus, things that you've personally tried or things that you're seeing emerging more with your peers.
Yeah, I haven't messed with the ketones as much. Others have, and there's been more research on those. The creatine and caffeine are staples, as well as NSAIDs and anti-inflammatories, even Tylenol for more of the pain stuff. And then a big one I feel is actually just like vitamin D and iron, just steady through the race. So, every 24 hours, taking an iron before you go to bed, I feel is important when you're in a 5, 6, 7, 10-day race. I think that helps a lot with the recovery aspect. That's kind of the big ones that I think. And then, those are the big ones. Occasionally even doing a protein powder, which is more, not really supplement like a macro, but it's an easy way to, let's say we're transitioning from trekking or biking onto the paddle, and we're going to paddle for 12 hours or 13 hours or 14 hours. Well, we can load up on some protein and try to get that into the legs while we're not using the legs as much. Same thing, take a big meal, heart rate's lower, we can try to build up those carbohydrate stores back in the legs before we transition back onto them. And so recovering while moving is a weird concept, but that's something that we're working on. And same thing when you're going to sleep, it's loading up the body, even an iron supplement, a multivitamin, generic multivitamin. You're doing the macro kind of the caloric intake, the macro side, and then even some of the micronutrients. I think just keeping those coming in simple, easy things you can take help to just holistically keep you recovering and moving well, and just kind of fine tuning stuff as you're going through.
Seems like there's a lot of logistics. Obviously, there has to be, right? And I think I caught this earlier. You are not privy to the map or the course until right beforehand. Is that true?
Correct. Yep. You'll have general ideas. So they might let you know what kind of general environments you'll be in. So you're in an alpine, or you're not going to be in alpine, or this or that. You'll know specialty equipment, and so you're prepared, but you don't know where you're going usually.
And so doesn't that makes it interesting trying to plan your nutrition, right? Because you're like, okay, I'm bringing all this stuff, but it seems like almost like a game time decision. Like, oh, now we read the map, we kind of see, oh, this is going to be a 12-hour paddle, or somewhere around there, right? Is that what you're deciding before the race actually starts?
Sometimes a few days prior to a week prior, maybe more, you'll get a breakdown of the order of the disciplines, and they'll give you info. So it's either a time estimate, 7 to 10 hours is the time estimate, or hey, the top team, we expect to finish in this time, and then you can plan based off of that.
Gotcha.
Sometimes they'll even put distance or elevation gain in. They'll try to give you info. Usually it's time estimates. And so they might do time estimate, elevation gain. They usually don't want to give all three, because you can start to try to really figure it out. But even if you do figure out parts of the course, you don't know where the checkpoints are, which is the hard
Right.
part. And so, but yeah, that's kind of it. So you'll know the legs, the orders you're going, the general time you'll be on those, maybe the elevation gain, and then you'll also know which resupply bins, containers, etc. do we get after what legs at
Gotcha.
transition. And so then you can really plan out your nutrition based on that, and then where your resupplies are and how you pack all your boxes and bins and bags and all those kind of things. So then when you get there, you kind of have that dialed in. And then those have weights on them, so you need to prioritize what you're packing or not. And even like clothing resupply and things like that are on there. So that's another aspect is, you know, for me, packing a little puffy jacket is huge because the weight to what it does for you ratio is big.
Yeah.
And then sleeping on the course too, like you'll have a little bivvy sack or something and sleep on the ground. You're in a, 24-hour trek section and you start at noon, you're going to be sleeping on the course for an hour and a half to 3 hours at some point. And so you got to factor that in and you just figure it out and lay on the ground and go to sleep.
Yeah. Whew. Well, it's good that you do know that ahead of time, or some of it ahead of time. Because I'm just thinking like, God, that would be a nutrition nightmare trying to plan that when it's like, oh, hey, you have an hour to start, figure it all out, right? So that's helpful.
That.
Have you done in the past with yourself, have you done any physiological testing, biomarker testing to kind of, what we call pop your hood a little bit and figure out what's going on inside your body, or micronutrient
You're talking
tests
about like metabolic testing?
Yeah,
and blood
metabolic
tests?
testing, blood work testing, like just to figure what you need better, or to how to train your body better.
I've done blood work testing. I haven't done the metabolic testing, just like normal threshold type testing and those kind of biomarkers.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever seen like any deficiencies in your body with anything, like maybe in the past?
Not with
you just
mine.
mentioned iron or vitamin D also.
Yeah, not really with mine. I did have an athlete though, so I coached him for a while. He set the Florida Trail FKT a couple of years ago, and I flew down there to help crew him day 4 through, I don't know, like 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
And on the phone with him, he was having issues with like dead legs, and I was like trying to figure it out. And pretty quickly when I got down there, it was just iron deficiency, right?
Wow.
And so, yeah, he was a vegetarian athlete, and so it was like pretty obvious once it dawned, but it took about 8 hours on the ground and talking to him to figure it out. And then once we did that, it was just like a game changer.
Oh my gosh.
And then, then I had a high school cross country athlete. So him and his mom hopped on a call for kind of like consultation, and we were just talking about stuff. He was having like, low energy. And so we were looking through it, and he had some blood work done. He had a vitamin E deficiency, which was odd.
That is odd.
Yeah. So his primary care gave him some kind of like supplement or something along those lines. And then we tracked his nutrition for a few days using chronometer and found out he was in a caloric deficit as well. And so just the reds is probably the biggest thing I think with athletes. And he was falling into, he's a growing high school boy that's doing an endurance sport, and he doesn't feel hungry, so he's not eating, and just kind of gets in that loop. And so there's a combination of those. Those are some of those. Often I see not eating enough is a big issue.
Yeah. So to that point, we talked about that and kind of the calories you aim for, depends on the course too, but have you, so there's this whole, I'm sure you keep up with all this stuff, but gut training is super popular right now. Like how do we train our guts to be able to absorb more carbohydrates, all this stuff. So my question is, have you done that personally? And my second follow-up question is, what do you think of it in terms of your sport?
For our sport? Yeah. So in general, I think the more you can eat, the better if you can sustain it and handle it in the gut, right?
Yep.
I think for our sport, because we're at a lower heart rate than even like a 100-mile racer, it's going to be a bit different. And because of that, we're burning a higher percentage of fat. And so I think, the more you can eat carbohydrates and whole foods and all those things, it's going to help you. And the more you can eat, the better. However, we're not burning stuff to the point in those longer races. It's more what I'll call the mid distance, right? You're 24 hours and below, you're 12 hours, 8 hours, where people are they can bonk there more easily. They're redlining a lot more. Those are ones where I think it's important to train the gut. The studies you're talking about, like 100 grams of carbs an hour and north of there and that kind of stuff. I mean, you're seeing top athletes that are really pushing the envelope there, and they're having success and they're seeing results. And so, the efficacy seems to be there for that. But for most people, it takes a lot of years, I think, of training to get up to there. And so For myself, I tried it. It wasn't working. I felt horrible.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I think it's something where, for me, I just slowly, the more I try to eat it as much as I can while feeling good. And the more I've been racing and doing endurance and stuff, the more I can handle things before I start to feel bad. And so I think it's just like a slow increase, of over time getting up to wherever you're at.
Yeah, it seems like the gut training is really making waves in the ultra running world right now. I mean, is it safe to say it hasn't really hit full on in the adventure racing scene?
Correct, it hasn't.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Interesting to follow because I feel like that is probably the next logical sport that it would kind of spill over into, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you get some people messing with it. So, friend Jason, I've been racing, I know they've been messing with that kind of stuff. But when you're looking at multi-day events, it's you're not sprinting at the point to where it's the steady avoiding it. And that's another factor too when it comes to the gut is you're purifying water on the way. You need to make sure that's dialed in because it's very easy for somebody to get sick or a teammate, not even from water, just might pass an illness around.
Right.
And so there are teams that'll drop because, someone got ill and then like a viral thing and then it spreads through the team. So for 3 days in a row, somebody's always having some kind of GI issue and it's propagating through the team and they're down, they're not eating, they're getting dehydrated and it turns bad. So that's kind of another layer of what that looks like. And then water resupply is another. I mean, you need to factor in like how much water are we carrying and what's the resupply look like? So in certain areas of the mountains, you can start to feel that there's a lot, but maybe you go onto the backside and all of a sudden it's dry on that side where there was snow melt on the other. Or, hey, this bike leg is through farm fields and like we're not going to drink that water because, there are livestock all around. It's not good. So you need to be very careful on what you're doing in that aspect as well.
My gosh, Nick, I feel like we could pick your brain for 2 more hours and like still want more. Just thinking of what you've shared so far, is there anything either related to the nutrition aspect of adventure racing or the sport itself that we haven't even asked you or things that you thought of that you'd want our listeners to know?
I think just in general, the sport's a lot of fun and we spend a lot of time talking about kind of, I'll call it the pointy edge. So for the ultra community, it'd be like the 100 miles plus kind of side, right, is what we've been talking about with Expedition. But I mean, there's a ton of fun races, put a 6-hour race is like a 5K, You can have people that'll specialize in throwdown in the 5K, but the bulk of people that run 5Ks in the US are just like families and kids just going out there having fun. So I would say, all over the US, there are these races, go out there, have fun. And the shorter the race, typically the easier the course is. So you can just pick up a map and have a little compass and you'll figure it out with trails or off trail and just go out there, have fun and try it out. It's a really good cross-training day or just a fun activity to do and something different and you might like it. So It's fun and it's super welcoming.
Is there somewhere where people can go to just find out more about, like, is there like an association or easy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, USARA, the United States Adventure Racing Association.
Perfect.
So if you go there, they'll have everything from, what is adventure racing, tons of links for getting into it, your first race, and then they have tons of races across the U.S. that are associated with them that you can find schedules and links and the whole thing. So
nice, awesome.
Yeah, and if you find one local, just reach out to the race director, even if you're new, and they can set you up with, other people that can help you out with figuring out your stuff or teaching you things. Tons of beginner clinics. For the small ones, don't be intimidated. They're fun. A typical shorter one will be, a flat water lake paddle where you're on a canoe or a kayak. You can have your kids with you. You have fun and we're just friends, anything you want. And then you go out there and you get a little lost in the state park, not too lost, and have fun and find some stuff and mountain bike some single track. And it's a good day.
Love it. Well, we will definitely include that in our show notes, Dina, right?
Yeah,
Sarah.
for sure.
Okay. Well, listen, Nick, this has been amazing. We're going to end with our high five question. So we do this with all our guests, just so our listeners can kind of get a glimpse into like behind the scenes, like what is Nick all about, right? It's not the formal question. So we're going to just fire these. These are just like meant to be off the cuff kind of a thing. So you ready for number one?
Let's do it.
All right. Favorite hobby that many people don't know about that you like to do?
Oh man, I feel like all my hobbies are with the sport.
I know, I kind of figured that.
I mean, I cuddle my dog at night. That I don't know if that's a hobby, but he
it's a
hops in
special
bed and gets
thing.
under. Yeah, and we cuddle, and then he comes on everything I do pretty much. So he's always in the truck, and when we set horses, he's out there. So.
Oh my God, what kind of dog?
He's a mutt. He's like a 10-year-old lab, but he acts like he's 5 still, so he's fun.
Nice.
Well, question number 2, Nick. I haven't looked at all the races you've done over your time in terms of adventure racing. I was curious if there's another race on your mind that's like, the ultimate. Is there one you haven't done yet? And where is this race? And if you've already done the one, what has been your favorite to date?
I would say one that I want to do, Patagonia used to have these huge races. It'd be like, a checkpoint every like 30 hours or something. Wow. And like there were like 4 on the race or something. And those seem pretty neat. There's a race director I met in Chile who has a really cool race that he puts on in like some of the volcanic regions. So those would be 2 that I really want to do, for sure. Yeah.
Nice.
In Africa. Yeah. Expedition Africa every year is in a different spot, usually in South Africa, but it'll move around. So that's one that I want to do. They just had it last week, but that'd be cool. So you're racing in like lions country.
Oh my gosh.
All kinds of stuff.
Man.
So that's on the docket for 2027?
Maybe, or 28. We'll see.
Okay.
Funds are important.
Yeah, for sure. That's something we haven't talked about at all. But okay, so number 3, you're at the long training day, you come back, what's the first thing you go to for your nutrition? Like, do you have a favorite recovery meal, post-workout meal after a long day?
If there's a huge day, right, usually when I get to the car, I'm going to down like, some protein and carbohydrate, like a shake kind of thing, and some carbohydrates just to kickstart it, and maybe like a multivitamin or something. Yeah. And then my big like cheat meal thing after is going to be like a bacon cheeseburger.
Oh, okay.
That's my big, like, I'm going to down a bunch of food.
Yeah. Question 4, Nick, I was curious, what is a book, or maybe it's a movie, some sort of media like that has really inspired you, either as an athlete or a coach, human being? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think it's called The Push by Tommy Caldwell. It's a rock climbing book.
Oh, yeah.
And so it talks about him on the Dawn Wall. It's just it's a mix of talking about that as well as a autobiography, and it's very self-reflective. And I just love that, big adventure guy talking about his life and retrospectively looking at just his relationship with extreme sports and just kind of how he grew up and everything. I thought it was a really easy book to listen to. I listened to it on, I was driving across Texas, actually. I've listened to it twice now. Nice. That's a book that I enjoy. It's a good story. You can put it on and you feel like you can relate to the individual, especially as he's kind of diving into the thoughts and emotions that he had at different aspects of his life.
Okay, last but not least, this is usually one that is the most difficult question to answer. I'm setting you up now. If you just had one piece of advice for all athletes, like literally one piece, all athletes, what would that one piece of advice be?
Sleep more.
Oh, there we go.
Ooh,
you didn't
I
even
like
have to think
it.
about that one.
No, yeah, just sleep more. An extra hour, if you can sneak in, even 30 minutes. If you can find a way to get 30 extra minutes a night over the course of a week, that's, I don't know, an extra 3.5 hours. I mean, that's huge. So, yeah, sleep more.
Love
That's
that
awesome.
message.
Good luck with that with kids, but
Yeah.
easier said than done.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, Nick, thank you so much. You are such a gift to your athletes and all of your experience that you've shared, all of your knowledge. We are so thankful for you to share all of this information and knowledge and inspiration. Truly, it's huge. And your athletes are so lucky to have you. And we'll definitely put all of your info in the show notes. So everyone listening, please check out Nick and his podcast and resources. Thank you. We'd love to have you back at a future time, especially after maybe Africa or the South American races. Hear more about your experiences. But thank you so much.
Yeah, we so appreciate you, and thanks for taking the time. And listeners, he also provides coaching. I don't know if you caught a glimpse. He's extremely knowledgeable, if you caught that during the conversation we had with him. But if you're thinking about getting into adventure racing, Nick, we'll put your website on there too. So if someone's like, hey, I need some extra help, some guidance, go to his website. So we're going to put that in the show notes for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And it's been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you.
Listeners, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you on our next episode.